What if Stannis Baratheon found Rhaegar's harp at Dragonstone and recognized whose son ruled the war? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. The morning sun beats down on the black stone of Dragonstone as King Stannis Baratheon stands in the vaults beneath the ancient fortress. Dust motes dance in shafts of light streaming through narrow windows cut into volcanic rock. The air smells of salt and age, of secrets buried for 16 years beneath the seat of dragons. Stannis runs his fingers along the edge of an ornate chest, one of dozens that line the chamber walls. 4 moons. He has delayed his return to the north, claiming the need to secure Dragonstone's defenses. Yet in truth, he searches for something more valuable than gold or steel. Every Targaryen artifact, every piece of their legacy, might hold the key to legitimizing his claim to the Iron Throne. The chest opens with a groan of ancient hinges. Inside, wrapped in faded silk the color of dried blood, lies an instrument that makes Stannis pause. It is a harp, but not just any harp. Silver strings catch the morning light, like captured starlight. The wood is pale as winter snow, inlaid with mother-of-pearl that forms the shape of a dragon whose tail curves around the frame. But it is the inscription carved into the base that makes the King of Dragonstone step closer, his jaw tightening as he reads the words etched in High Valyrian. For my son, whose song shall be of ice and fire. Stannis knows this hand. He has seen it on proclamations and letters, on documents that once bore the seal of the Prince of Dragonstone. This is Rhaegar Targaryen's harp, the instrument the Dragon Prince was said to play until tears ran down the cheeks of even the hardest knights. Your Grace, Davos Seaworth enters the vault, his footsteps echoing off stone walls. The ships are ready for provisioning. We can depart for the war within the week. Stannis does not look up from the harp. His mind races through possibilities, through memories of a bastard boy with dark hair and grey eyes, who now commands the wall, the boy who carries himself like a prince despite his name. The boy whose very presence seemed to unsettle even Robert, though his brother never said why. Davos, what do you remember of Jon Snow? The Onion Knight pauses, surprised by the question. A good lad, Your Grace, honourable like his father. Though he has that stark look about him, there's something else, something in his bearing. Stannis repeats, setting the harp carefully aside. Tell me, have you ever wondered why Ned Stark, a man of such rigid honour, would father a bastard? Why he would bring that boy home and raise him alongside his true-born children? Davos shifts uncomfortably. Men make mistakes, Your Grace. Even good men. But Stannis shakes his head. He lifts the harp again, studying the inscription. For my son, whose song shall be of ice and fire. Ice and fire. Stark and Targaryen. The wolf and the dragon. Your Grace, you cannot mean to suggest... I suggest nothing. Stannis cuts him off. But I remember Robert's rage whenever Rhaegar's name was spoken. I remember how he would not hear talk of Lyanna's last days. And I remember a wet nurse from Starfall, who died under suspicious circumstances, and whispers of a tower in Dawn, where my brother found his beloved, too late. Footsteps on the stairs announce another arrival. Melisandre descends into the vault like a flame made flesh, her red robes rustling against stone. Her ruby gleams at her throat as she surveys the scene before her. The Lord of Light has guided you to this discovery, Your Grace, she says, her voice carrying the weight of prophecy. I see great power in that instrument, power that sleeps, waiting to be awakened. Stannis sets the harp down with deliberate care. Power. Yes, there would be power in such a revelation. If Jon Snow is truly Rhaegar's son, then he is no bastard at all. He is the rightful heir to the Iron Throne. The words hang in the air like a sword above their heads. Davos pales, understanding the implications immediately. If Jon Snow is legitimate, if he is truly the son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark, then Stannis' own claim crumbles to ash. Your Grace, Davos begins carefully. Such accusations require proof. The boy believes himself Ned Stark's bastard. The realm believes it as well. Melisandre steps forward, her eyes fixed on the harp. Bloodlines run deep in those with the gift. The flames have shown me a young man standing atop a wall of ice, dragons flying overhead. Fire and ice, united against the darkness that comes. Stannis grits his teeth. He has spent years fighting for his rightful place, grinding his will against an indifferent world that would see him cast aside. Yet here, in this ancient vault, he faces a truth that could reshape everything. If Jon Snow is Rhaegar's heir, then duty demands he acknowledge it. Justice demands it. We return to the wall immediately, he declares, closing the chest with a sharp snap. Prepare my ship, and see that this harp is packed carefully. I would not see it damaged. Davos nods, though worry creases his weathered features. Your Grace, if what you suspect is true, what will you do with such knowledge? Stannis stares at the closed chest for a long moment. Outside, waves crash against the rocky shores of Dragonstone. The sound echoes through the chamber like the beating of some great heart. What I have always done, Davos, my duty. If Jon Snow is the rightful king, then the rightful king he shall be. But first, I must know the truth of it. I must look into his eyes and see what Ned Stark saw 16 years ago when he chose to lie to the realm itself. With that, King Stannis Baratheon turns and climbs the stairs, leaving the vault and its secrets behind. Yet the harp travels with him, wrapped once more in Targaryen silk. Soon, very soon, its silver strings will sing again. And when they do, the song they play may well change the fate of the Seven Kingdoms. The ships of Dragonstone prepare to sail north, carrying their king toward a bastard who may be no bastard at all. In the chambers above, Melisandre stares into her flames and sees visions of ice and fire joining as one. The Game of Thrones is about to take a turn that none could have foreseen, all because a harp waited 16 years for the right man to find it. And in the north, Jon Snow stands atop the wall, unknowing that his entire world is about to change. The song of ice and fire is about to begin, and he is the melody around which all other notes must arrange themselves. The winds of winter blow cold across Dragonstone as the last ships make ready to sail. Soon, the wall will witness the meeting of two kings, though only one knows it yet. The harp will sing again, and when it does, the bastard of Winterfell will learn the truth of his birth at last. The cold wind whips across the top of the wall as Jon Snow stands in the Lord Commander's solar, staring at the parchments spread across his desk. Ravens have brought word from across the north, and none of the news is welcome. 3 more wildling bands seek passage through the wall, fleeing something in the deep woods that their leaders will not name. His own brothers grow restless with each decision he makes to grant them entry. Jon rubs his temples, feeling the weight of command settle heavier on his shoulders with each passing day. At 17, he leads men twice his age who remember him as Ned Stark's bastard boy, not their chosen commander. Every choice he makes is questioned. Every mercy he shows to the wildlings seen as weakness by those who would see them all die beyond the wall. A knock at his door interrupts his brooding. Enter. Samwell Tarly steps inside, his face flushed from the cold and his breath misting in the air. Behind him come Grenn and Pipe, Jon's closest friends among the Night's Watch. Their expressions tell him they bring news he will not want to hear. "What is it?" Jon asks, though he dreads the answer. "The men are talking," Sam says carefully. "Sir Alliser has been holding meetings in the common hall. He says you're letting your soft heart rule your head, that you'll be the death of us all." Gren nods grimly. "Half the brothers think you're right to help the wildlings. The other half think you're a fool. It's dividing the watch, Jon." Jon moves to the window, looking out over the courtyard, where black-cloaked brothers go about their daily tasks. Some nod respectfully when they see him watching. Others turn away. The unity that should bind them all is fraying like an old rope. "What would you have me do?" he asks. "Turn away women and children, because some of our brothers fear change. Let innocents die because they were born on the wrong side of a wall, built by men 8,000 years dead." "You know we're with you," Pip says quickly. But Sir Alliser's words carry weight with the older men. He says you're too young, too idealistic, that you don't understand what it means to hold the wall. Before Jon can respond, another knock echoes through the chamber. This time, it is Dolorous Ed who enters, his long face even more dour than usual. "My lord," he says with a respectful nod. "Ships have been sighted approaching from the south, flying Baratheon banners." Jon feels his stomach tighten. "How many ships?" "3, my lord." "War galleys. The maester says they're from Dragonstone." San exchanges glances with the others. "Stannis? But he left for the north weeks ago. Why would he return?" Jon shakes his head, as puzzled as the rest. When Stannis had departed Castle Black, Jon had assumed it would be the last he saw of the would-be king for months, perhaps years. Their parting had been cordial enough, but Stannis had made no promises to return. "Ready a reception," Jon commands. "If King Stannis has come back to the wall, we'll greet him with proper honors." Within the hour, the ships dock at Eastwatch by the sea. Jon rides out, with a small escort to meet them, the cold air biting at his face as his horse's hooves thunder across the snow-covered ground. When he reaches the harbour, Stannis Baratheon is already waiting on the dock, flanked by Sir Davos Seaworth and the Red Priestess Melisandre. "Your Grace," Jon says, dismounting and offering a respectful bow. "This is unexpected. I thought you had business in the north." Stannis studies him with those sharp blue eyes, as if seeing him for the first time. There is something different about the king's manner, a tension that was not there before. Behind him, sailors unload chests and supplies from the ships. But Jon notices one item in particular that Stannis guards carefully: a wooden case, bound with iron strips. "Lord Commander," Stannis replies formally, "I find myself in need of counsel. Recent discoveries have raised questions that only you might answer." Jon feels a chill that has nothing to do with the wind. "What sort of questions, Your Grace?" "The sort best discussed in private." Stannis's gaze never wavers from Jon's face. "I would speak with you alone, away from curious ears." They ride back to Castle Black in silence, Jon's mind racing with possibilities. What could Stannis have discovered that would bring him back to the wall? What questions could possibly require Jon's specific knowledge? In the Lord Commander's solar, Stannis sets the wooden case on Jon's desk with deliberate care. Davos and Melisandre flank him like guardians, their faces grave in the flickering candlelight. "Before we begin," Stannis says, "I must ask you about your dreams." Jon blinks, taken aback. "My dreams, Your Grace, of fire and ice, of songs played on silver strings." The questions hit Jon like physical blows. He does dream, has always dreamed, but he has never spoken of those dreams to anyone. Visions of dragons, soaring over frozen wastelands. Music that makes his heart ache with longing for something he cannot name. Fire that does not burn. Ice that does not freeze. Sometimes, Jon admits carefully. Why do you ask? Instead of answering, Stannis opens the case. Inside, nestled in red silk, lies the most beautiful harp Jon has ever seen. Silver strings catch the candlelight like captured stars, and mother-of-pearl dragons seem to dance along the pale wood frame. The moment Jon sees it, something deep within him stirs. A recognition he cannot explain. A pull toward the instrument that makes his hands tremble. He has seen this harp before, not with his eyes, but in dreams that left him weeping, for reasons he could never understand. You know it, Stannis observes, watching Jon's reaction carefully. No, Jon says, but his voice lacks conviction. I've never seen it before in my life. Yet your face says otherwise. Stannis lifts the harp from its case, running his fingers along the silver strings. The sound they make is haunting, beautiful, and sad at once. This belonged to Prince Rhaegar Targaryen. He played it often, they say. Made strong men weep with his songs. Jon feels his breath catch. Why are you showing me this? Because it bears an inscription. Stannis continues, turning the harp so Jon can see the base. Written in High Valyrian, it speaks of a son whose song shall be of ice and fire. The words hang in the air between them like a blade. Jon stares at the inscription. Though he cannot read the ancient script, something about those words, about this harp, about Stannis's piercing gaze, makes him feel as if the ground beneath his feet is shifting. What are you suggesting, Your Grace? Jon asks quietly. I suggest nothing, Stannis replies, echoing words he spoke to Davos in the vaults of Dragonstone. But I observe much. A bastard boy, with Targaryen features hidden beneath stark coloring. A young man who dreams of dragons and fire. A commander who shows mercy to his enemies and inspires loyalty in his followers. Melisandre steps forward, her red robes rustling like flames. The blood of kings runs in your veins, Jon Snow. I have seen it in the flames. Dragon's blood, sleeping but not dead. He is Ned Stark's bastard, born of a moment's weakness with a woman whose name his father would never speak. He has been told this story his entire life. My father, your father, Stannis interrupts, was the most honorable man in Westeros. Do you truly believe Ned Stark would father a bastard? Do you truly believe he would bring that child home to humiliate his wife and remind her daily of his infidelity? Jon has wondered this very thing countless times, lying awake in the darkness of his chambers. He has seen how other lords treat their bastards, acknowledging them, but keeping them at arm's length. Yet Ned Stark had raised him as a son, trained him as a true-born child would be trained, loved him without reservation. If not my father, then who? Jon asks, though part of him already knows the answer. Stannis sets the harp carefully back in its case. That, Lord Commander, is what we must discover. But I believe the truth lies not in what you have been told, but in what you remember, in your dreams, in your instincts, in the fire that burns within you. Jon sinks into his chair, overwhelmed by the implications of what Stannis is suggesting. If he is not Ned Stark's bastard, then who is he? What is he? This must remain between us, Stannis continues. Until we know the truth with certainty, these questions must not leave this room. The realm is not ready for such revelations. Jon nods mutely, his world tilting on its axis. Everything he thought he knew about himself, about his place in the world, has been called into question by a harp and a king's observations. As night falls over Castle Black, Jon Snow stares out his window at the stars scattered across the dark sky. Somewhere among them, dragons once flew, and princes played silver-stringed harps. And perhaps, if Stannis is right, the blood of those princes flows through his veins. The bastard of Winterfell has questions now that demand answers, and deep in his heart, he fears what those answers might reveal. The fire crackles in the Lord Commander's solar as Jon Snow stares at the silver-stringed harp, his world unraveling with each word Stannis speaks. The king sits across from him, methodical and precise, laying out his theory like a general planning a siege. "Consider the timing," Stannis continues, his voice cutting through Jon's stunned silence. "You were born in 283, the same year Rhaegar Targaryen died at the Trident. The same year Lyanna Stark died in Dorne, far from her family, attended only by her brother." Jon shakes his head, though the motion feels weak even to himself. "My father loved a woman during the war. He told me so himself. She died of fever," he said. "Your father told you many things," Stannis replies, "but did he ever tell you her name? Did he ever speak of where he met her? How they came to be together? Did he ever show you her grave?" The questions strike Jon like arrows, finding their mark. How many times had he begged Ned for details about his mother? How many times had his father's face closed off, that familiar look of pain and guilt crossing his features, before he would change the subject? He said it would not honor her memory to speak of it. "Honor her memory," Stannis repeats, "or protect a secret that could have seen you killed before you drew your second breath." Jon stands abruptly, pacing to the window. Below, in the courtyard, men of the Night's Watch go about their evening duties, unaware that their Lord Commander's very identity hangs in the balance. The normalcy of the scene feels surreal, against the magnitude of what Stannis suggests. "You're asking me to believe that Ned Stark, the most honorable man in the Seven Kingdoms, lied to everyone for 16 years. That he let his wife hate me, let her treat me as a reminder of his infidelity, all to protect some secret about my birth. I'm asking you to consider that perhaps the greatest act of honor your father ever performed was raising another man's son as his own, knowing the cost it would exact on his family and his reputation." The words hit Jon like a physical blow. He remembers Catelyn Stark's cold stares, her barely concealed resentment. He remembers being excluded from family dinners when important guests visited, being told to eat in the kitchens like a servant. If Stannis is right, she suffered that cruelty for a lie meant to protect him. But why would Rhaegar? Jon begins, then stops. The implications are too vast, too dangerous. Why would the Prince of Dragonstone take Lyanna Stark? Stannis finishes. The histories say he abducted her, raped her, started a war for his lust. But what if they were wrong? What if she went willingly? Jon thinks of the stories he heard in Winterfell, whispered tales of the Night of the Laughing Tree, of the crown of blue roses, Rhaegar placed in Lyanna's lap at the tourney at Harrington. His aunt, wild and willful, who some said was more wolf than woman. Even if that were true, Jon says desperately, even if they were lovers, I would still be a bastard. Rhaegar was married to Elia Martell. Stannis reaches for the harp, running his fingers along its frame until he finds what he seeks. There, carved in smaller letters below the main inscription, are more words in High Valyrian. "Can you read this?" Stannis asks. Jon shakes his head. "I know a few words, nothing more. It says, born of love, blessed by the seven, heir to ice and fire. Not the words one carves for a bastard. Lord Commander." The room seems to spin around Jon. He grips the back of his chair, fighting a wave of dizziness. If Stannis is right, if Rhaegar and Lyanna were married somehow, then he is not Jon Snow the bastard. He is Aegon Targaryen, Stannis says quietly, reading his thoughts. Sixth of that name, if my understanding is correct, true-born son of the Prince of Dragonstone and Lyanna Stark, rightful heir to the Iron Throne. No. Jon's voice cracks like a whip. No, that's impossible. I'm a bastard. I'm nothing. You are the blood of the dragon, comes a new voice from the doorway. Melisandre glides into the chamber, like living flame, her red robe seeming to glow in the firelight. Her ruby gleams at her throat as she fixes Jon with her penetrating gaze. I have seen you in the flames, Jon Snow, she continues, standing atop a wall of ice with fire flowing from your hands. Dragons bow before you, and the dead rise at your command. You carry the blood of kings, the fire that burns away darkness. Jon backs against the window, overwhelmed by the certainty in her voice. You're both mad. This is madness. Is it? Stannis stands, moving to face him directly. Look at yourself. Truly look. You have the stark features, yes. But beneath them lies something else. The purple in your eyes when you're angry. The way you move in battle, like you were born to command. The way men follow you despite your youth, despite your bastard birth. Jon wants to deny it, to flee this chamber and these impossible revelations. But memories rise unbidden in his mind. The strange dreams that have plagued him since childhood. The way his direwolf, Ghost, seemed drawn to him from the moment they met. The ease with which he mastered swordplay, as if the knowledge was already within him. And always, the music. Songs that made his heart ache with longing. Melodies that seemed familiar, though he had never heard them before. Like the silver strings of the harp, calling to something deep in his blood. What proof would you accept? Stannis asks. What would convince you that what I say is true? Jon turns back to face them, his mind racing. I don't know. Documents, perhaps. Witnesses, something more than speculation and old harps. There may be such proof, Stannis admits. Howland Reed was with your father at the Tower of Joy. He alone survived that day besides Ned Stark himself. If anyone knows the truth of what happened there, it would be him. Reed has not been seen in years, Jon points out. He hides in his swamps and refuses all visitors. Then we must find a way to draw him out, Stannis replies, or find other proof. There are septons who keep records of marriages, even secret ones. There are maesters who served in Dorne during the war. Jon slumps back into his chair, the weight of possibility crushing down on him. And if it's true, if I am who you say I am, what then? Stannis and Melisandre exchange glances. The king's jaw tightens as he considers his words carefully. Then you have a choice to make, Stannis says finally. You can remain Jon Snow, bastard of Winterfell, Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, or you can become Aegon Targaryen, rightful king of the Seven Kingdoms. But not both, Jon says quietly. Not both, Stannis agrees. Jon looks again at the harp, its silver strings gleaming in the firelight. Somewhere in his mind, he can almost hear the music it might make. A song of ice and fire, of wolves and dragons, of secrets buried and truths revealed. I need time, he says at last. Time to think, to remember, to decide what I believe. Time we have, for now. But know this. Winter is coming, and with it enemies that will not care about bloodlines or birthrights. The dead are stirring beyond the wall, and only fire can stop them. Whether you are Snow or Targaryen, You will be needed in the war to come. And until then, this knowledge stays between the three of us, Stannis declares. One word spoken carelessly could see us all dead and the realm thrown into chaos. Jon nods, understanding the weight of the secret he now carries. As Stannis and Melisandre prepare to leave, the king pauses at the door. For what it's worth, he says, I believe your father, both your fathers, would be proud of the man you've become. Blood or no blood, you are worthy of the name you bear. Alone in his chamber, Jon Snow stands before the dying fire, holding Rhaegar's harp. With trembling fingers, he plucks one of the silver strings. The note that rings out is pure and clear, hauntingly beautiful. And, for just a moment, in that perfect tone, Jon thinks he hears the echo of a song he has never learned, but somehow knows by heart. A song of ice and fire, of love and loss, of a prince who died too young, and the son he never knew he had. The bastard of Winterfell sets the harp carefully aside and stares out into the darkness beyond the wall. Tomorrow he will still be Lord Commander, still be bound by his vows and duties, but tonight, for the first time in his life, Jon Snow wonders if he might be something more. The song of ice and fire has begun to play, and he is both its melody and its player. What tune it will ultimately make remains to be seen. The maester's chambers smell of herbs and dying embers as Jon Snow sits beside the narrow bed where Aemon Targaryen draws labored breaths. At 102 years old, the last maester of House Targaryen fades like a candle guttering in the wind, his milky eyes staring sightless at the ceiling above. Jon has come seeking wisdom, but finds himself reluctant to speak the questions burning in his mind. How does one ask a dying man about secrets that could reshape the Seven Kingdoms? How does one probe for truths that might be better left buried? Lord Commander, Aemon whispers, his voice barely audible above the crackling fire. You sit heavily tonight. What troubles weigh upon your heart? Jon shifts in his chair, choosing his words carefully. I have been wondering about bloodlines, Maester, about how the blood of kings might hide itself, pass, unnoticed through generations. Aemon's sightless eyes seem to sharpen, focusing on Jon with an intensity that belies his frail condition. An interesting question. The blood of dragons has always been peculiar. It can sleep for generations, then wake when least expected. Sleep? Hidden in plain sight, Aemon continues, his breathing growing more labored. A Targaryen prince might sire a child who shows no obvious signs of their heritage. The purple eyes might be grey, the silver-gold hair might be brown, but the fire remains, waiting. Jon feels his heart racing. Does Aemon know? Has the old maester suspected all along? Hypothetically, Jon says, treading carefully, if such a child existed, how might one confirm their heritage? A smile plays across Aemon's withered lips. Hypothetically, there are signs for those who know how to look. The way they move in battle, as if dragons guide their sword arm, the way men follow them, drawn by something they cannot name. The dreams. Dragons dream of fire, Lord Commander. They dream of flying, of burning, of songs played on silver strings that make the heart ache with longing. Jon grips the arm of his chair. Aemon knows. Somehow, the dying maester knows exactly what Jon has come to ask. Why do you tell me this? Jon asks quietly. Aemon reaches out with one trembling hand, and Jon takes it gently. The old man's grip is surprisingly strong for one so near death. Because the realm will have need of dragons before the end, Aemon whispers. The long night is coming, and only fire can hold back the darkness. Whether that fire burns in a king or a bastard matters little to the dead. Outside the chamber, footsteps approach. Sam Tarly appears in the doorway, carrying a steaming bowl of broth and a collection of books under his arm. He pauses when he sees Jon, uncertainty flickering across his round face. "My lord, I didn't know you were here. I can come back later." "Stay," Aemon says before Jon can respond. "Both of you, there are things that must be said before I join my ancestors." Sam sets down the broth and books, pulling up another chair. Jon notices the titles among Sam's collection. Bloodlines of the Dragon Kings, the genealogies of the great houses, births and deaths in the reign of Aerys II. "You've been researching," Jon observes. Sam flushes slightly. "I couldn't sleep after our conversation yesterday. About Sir Alliser and the division among the brothers. I thought, perhaps if I understood more about the great houses, about legitimacy and bloodlines, I might better counsel you on political matters." Aemon chuckles, a sound like autumn leaves rustling. "Ever the scholar, young Samwell. What have your books told you? For instance, did you know that Prince Rhaegar's son by Elia Martell was named Aegon? He would have been the rightful heir, had he lived." "Had he lived," Aemon agrees. "But babies are fragile things. Wars are hard on the innocent." Jon feels a chill run down his spine. "You speak as if you knew him." "I knew his father well," Aemon replies. "Rhaegar was complicated, brilliant, melancholy, obsessed with prophecy. He believed the prince that was promised would be born of his line, would be the one to unite ice and fire against the coming darkness." Sam looks up from his book, frowning. "But Rhaegar died at the Trident. His line ended with him. Did it?" Aemon asks, his voice growing weaker. "Lines have a way of continuing, even when the world believes them severed. Love finds a way, even in the midst of war." Jon and Sam exchange glances. There is something in the old maester's tone, a weight of knowledge that suggests he knows more than he is saying. "Maester," Jon says carefully, "if a Targaryen prince had sired another child, a child whose existence was hidden to protect them, would that child have a stronger claim than other claimants?" Aemon's breathing becomes more labored, but his mind remains sharp. If such a child existed, and if that child were legitimate, then yes. The laws of inheritance are clear, but legitimacy is a tricky thing, especially when marriages are conducted in secret, away from prying eyes. Sam's eyes widen as understanding begins to dawn. "You're not speaking hypothetically, are you?" Aemon turns his head towards Sam's voice. "I am an old man, dying, speaking of old secrets and older truths. What you make of my words is between you and the gods." A fit of coughing seizes the ancient maester, and Jon quickly helps him sip water from a cup beside his bed. When the spasm passes, Aemon's breathing is even more shallow. "My time grows short," he whispers. "Jon Snow." "Yes, maester." "You have been a good Lord Commander, better than many who were true-born. Remember that when the revelations come. Remember that honor is not in your blood, but in your choices." Aemon's hand finds Jon's again, gripping with surprising strength. "The dragon hidden in winter," he breathes. "That was what she called you. Lyanna Stark. She said you would be the dragon hidden in winter, the fire beneath the snow." Jon's blood turns to ice. "How do you know that name? How do you—" Maester Aemon Targaryen, the last of his name, dies with a small smile on his lips, and secrets still dancing behind his sightless eyes. Jon sits in stunned silence as Sam gently closes the old man's eyes. The weight of what Aemon has said, what he has implied, hangs heavy in the chamber. "Jon," Sam says quietly, Who is Lyanna Stark? Jon looks at his friend, at the open books scattered around them, at the peaceful face of the man who carried the blood of dragons for over a century. How much should he reveal? How much can Sam be trusted with? She was my father's sister, Jon says finally. She died during Robert's rebellion. Sam nods, then picks up one of his books and flips through several pages until he finds what he seeks. According to this, Sam says, his voice growing excited despite the solemnity of the moment, Lyanna Stark was betrothed to Robert Baratheon, but she disappeared before the wedding. Some say Rhaegar Targaryen abducted her. Some say, Jon agrees carefully. But what if he didn't? Sam continues, his scholarly mind racing ahead. What if she went willingly? What if... He stops, staring at Jon with growing realization. What if what, Sam? What if the child everyone believes to be Ned Stark's bastard is actually the legitimate son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark? What if you're not Jon Snow at all, but Aegon Targaryen, rightful heir to the Iron Throne? The words hang in the air between them, like a drawn sword. Jon meets Sam's gaze and sees not judgment or ambition, but loyalty and concern. If such a thing were true, Jon says slowly, what would you counsel? Sam closes the book and leans forward. I would counsel my friend to be very careful about who else learns this secret. And I would tell him that whether he's a Snow or a Targaryen, he's still the best man I've ever known. Jon nods, feeling the weight of another person added to the small circle of those who know. Outside, the wind howls across the wall, and in the distance, wolves begin to sing their evening songs. Maester Aemon is dead, but his final gift lives on in the knowledge he shared and the blessing he bestowed. The dragon hidden in winter has begun to stir, and soon the realm will feel the heat of its awakening. Sam helps Jon prepare Aemon's body for the funeral pyre. As they work, Sam quietly shares what else he has discovered in his research. Discrepancies in dates, gaps in records, subtle inconsistencies that begin to paint a picture of a great deception maintained for 16 years. By the time they finish their grim task, 3 men know the truth that could change everything. And one of them, the scholar with the gentle heart and fierce loyalty, has already begun to consider how that truth might be proven to the world. The Game of Thrones has gained a new player, though Sam Tarly would be surprised to learn he is one. Knowledge, after all, is the sharpest sword of all. The wind howls across the battlements of Castle Black as King Stannis Baratheon paces the length of his chambers, his jaw working like a man grinding steel between his teeth. Below, the funeral pyre of Maester Aemon still smoulders, sending grey smoke into the star-filled sky. The old Targaryen is ash now, taking his secrets to whatever lies beyond. But the knowledge he confirmed weighs heavier on Stannis than any crown ever could. Davos Seaworth sits quietly by the brazier, watching his king struggle with demons that no sword can cut down. In all their years together, through siege and storm, victory and defeat, Davos has never seen Stannis so conflicted. The Onion Knight knows the signs, the rigid posture, the clenched fists, the way Stannis stops mid-stride, as if fighting some internal battle with each step. Speak your mind, Stannis says finally, not turning from the narrow window. I can hear you thinking from here. Davos shifts in his chair, choosing his words carefully. You've been wrestling with this since we returned from Aemon's chambers. What did the old maester tell you that has you so troubled? Stannis turns at last, his blue eyes reflecting the firelight like chips of winter ice. He confirmed what we suspected. Jon Snow is no bastard. He is Aegon Targaryen, legitimate son of Rhaegar and Lyanna Stark, rightful heir to the Iron Throne. The words hang in the air between them like a blade poised to fall. Davos feels his stomach drop as the implications crash over him. If Jon Snow is truly Aegon Targaryen, if he is legitimate, then Stannis' entire claim to the throne crumbles to dust. "You're certain?" Davos asks, though he already knows the answer. "As certain as I can be without a marriage document signed by septons and witnessed by lords," Stannis replies. Aemon knew. He called the boy the dragon hidden in winter. Those were Lyanna's words. Davos, the dying words of a woman who knew her son would have to hide his true nature to survive. Davos leans forward, his weathered hands clasped before him. "And what do you mean to do with this knowledge?" The question strikes at the heart of everything. Stannis has spent years fighting for what he believes is rightfully his, grinding his will against an indifferent realm that would see him cast aside. He has sacrificed everything. His brother's love, his daughter's innocence, countless lives in service to his claim. And now he faces the possibility that his claim was never legitimate to begin with. "Justice demands I acknowledge him," Stannis says slowly. "If Jon Snow is the rightful king, then it is my duty to see him crowned." "And your own claim?" Stannis' laugh is bitter as winter wind. "What claim? I am Robert's heir, but Robert was a usurper. If Rhaegar's legitimate son lives, then the throne belongs to him by right of blood and law. Your Grace, you're speaking of abandoning everything you've fought for, everything we've sacrificed. Are you certain this is wisdom and not something else?" "Something else?" "Guilt," Davos says quietly. "Over the things we've done in pursuit of the crown, the shadow that killed Renly, the men burned as sacrifices. Perhaps you see in this boy a chance at redemption, a way to make those deaths meaningful." Before he can respond, footsteps echo in the corridor outside. Melisandre enters without announcement, her red robes seeming to glow in the firelight. "The flames have shown me visions tonight," she says, her voice carrying the weight of prophecy. "The boy burns bright with dragon fire. He is the prince that was promised, the one who will lead the fight against the darkness." "The prince that was promised," Stannis repeats. "You once said that was me." "I said you had a part to play in the war to come," Melisandre corrects. "And you do. But leadership in that war belongs to another. To the one born of ice and fire, the one who can unite the living against the dead." Davos scowls at the Red Priestess. More prophecies and riddles. What if you're wrong? What if this boy is just another pretender with a sad story and convenient bloodlines? "Then we test him," Stannis says, his voice growing firm with decision. "We watch how he leads, how he chooses between mercy and justice, how he handles power when it's offered to him. A true king reveals himself through his actions, not his bloodline." Melisandre nods approvingly. The fires agree. He must be tested, proven worthy of the destiny that awaits him. A commotion in the courtyard below draws their attention to the window. A rider has arrived, his horse lathered with sweat despite the cold. Even from this distance, they can see the urgency in his movements as he dismounts and rushes toward the rookery. "News from the south," Davos observes. "Nothing good travels that fast." Within the hour, a steward brings them the Raven's message. Stannis reads it in silence, his expression growing darker with each line. When he finishes, he passes the parchment to Davos. "Cersei Lannister has been arrested by the Faith Militant." Davos reads aloud. "Charged with adultery, treason, and murder. Tommen is king in name only. The realm bleeds as various factions vie for control. Chaos." Melisandre breathes. The old order crumbles, making way for the new. Stannis moves to his table, spreading out maps of Westeros. This changes everything. With Cersei imprisoned and Tommen powerless, The throne is effectively empty. Other claimants will move to fill the void. Aegon from the east, perhaps Daenerys Targaryen if she ever crosses the narrow sea. All the more reason to press your own claim now, Davos suggests. Strike while your enemies are distracted. But Stannis shakes his head. No. This is the perfect opportunity to test young Snow. How does he respond when the realm is in chaos? Does he see an opportunity for personal gain, or does he focus on his duty to the Night's Watch and the coming threat beyond the wall? And if he fails your test, then perhaps you're right to cancel caution, Stannis admits. Perhaps this revelation is madness, and I should pursue the throne with all the strength I possess. But if he proves worthy, you'll throw away your life's work for the sake of an idealistic notion of justice, Davos finishes. Stannis meets his friend's eyes steadily. Yes, that's exactly what I'll do. The room falls silent, except for the crackling of the fire and the wind outside. Davos sees the resolution in his king's face, the same iron determination that carried them through the siege of Storm's End all those years ago. When Stannis Baratheon makes a decision, no force in the Seven Kingdoms can turn him from it. What manner of test do you have in mind? Davos asks finally. The wildlings, Stannis replies immediately. They represent everything the Night's Watch traditionally opposes, yet Jon Snow has chosen to aid them. How he handles the inevitable conflicts, how he balances mercy with necessity, how he leads when his own brothers question his decisions. That will tell us what kind of king he might become. And if his own men turn against him, then we'll see what he's truly made of, Stannis says grimly. Kings must sometimes choose between being loved and being right. A true king chooses right, even when it costs him everything. Melisandre steps closer to the map, her ruby gleaming. The boy will face trials beyond what you imagine. The dead stir in the far north, and winter comes with teeth and claws. He will need allies, guidance, strength. He'll need a throne to command from, if he's to unite the realm against that threat, Stannis adds. But first, he must prove he deserves it. Davos rolls up the Raven's message, his mind already working on the implications. How long do we wait? How long do we test him while the realm burns? Not long, Stannis admits. Events move quickly now. Within moons, perhaps weeks, we'll know if Jon Snow is the king the realm needs, or just another boy playing at war. The three of them stand in contemplative silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Outside, the wall stretches away into darkness, and beyond it lies something that no crown can command, and no sword can defeat. The coming war will demand more than political maneuvering and competing claims. It will demand heroes. And Stannis Baratheon, the righteous king who ground his teeth on duty and justice, prepares to discover whether he has found one or merely convinced himself to see greatness where only potential exists. The Game of Thrones continues, but the rules are changing. Soon, very soon, all players must choose whether to serve themselves or serve the realm. For Stannis Baratheon, that choice is already made. Tomorrow he will begin testing the boy who might be king, and the realm will rise or fall on the results of that test. The horn blows 3 long blasts across Castle Black as dawn breaks grey and cold over the wall. Jon Snow stands atop the battlements, watching a ragged column of wildlings approach through the snow. Even from this distance, he can see their desperation, women clutching children, old men stumbling with exhaustion, warriors who look more haunted than fierce. Behind them, perhaps a mile distant, dark shapes move against the white landscape. The pursuing force is too far to make out clearly, but Jon knows what hunts these refugees. The dead walk beyond the wall, and winter has teeth sharper than any sword. My lord, Sir Alliser Thorne climbs the steps to join him, his face twisted with the familiar look of disdain. Another pack of wildlings seeks entry. I trust you'll order the gates barred and send them on their way. Jon doesn't turn from his vigil. They're running from something. Sir Alliser. Women and children don't flee their homes without cause. Wildlings lie as easily as they breathe. Thorne spits. This could be a ruse, a way to get armed enemies inside our walls. The men won't stand for it. Below, in the courtyard, Jon can see black-cloaked brothers gathering in angry clusters. Voices rise in heated discussion, and more than once he hears his own name spoken with frustration. The Night's Watch has always been divided on his policies toward the wildlings, but recent weeks have seen that division deepen into something approaching mutiny. The men will stand for what I order them to stand for. Jon replies quietly. I am the Lord Commander. Thorne snarls, a bastard who thinks noble blood makes him wise. Well, noble blood spills red as any other, and these wildlings will be the death of us all. From the corner of his eye, Jon notices another observer on the battlements. King Stannis stands 20 paces away, partially hidden in the shadow of a tower, but his sharp blue eyes miss nothing. The king watches this confrontation with the intensity of a man studying his enemy's defenses before a siege. The wildling column draws closer, and now Jon can make out details that chill his blood. Many bare wounds, hasty bandages stained with frozen blood. Some carry others who cannot walk, and in their eyes, even at this distance, he sees the hollow look of those who have witnessed horrors beyond description. Open the gates, Jon commands. My lord, I must protest. Thorne begins. You have protested. Jon cuts him off. Now you will obey, or you will find yourself in chains. Open the gates and prepare the wounded for treatment. Thorne's face darkens with rage, but he turns to carry out the order. Jon knows this will not end the matter. The Knight has been building opposition to his leadership for months, and this decision may finally give him the excuse he needs to act. The wildlings stream through Castle Black's gates, like water through a broken dam. Jon descends to meet them, flanked by Sam and a handful of loyal brothers. The wildling leader, a grizzled man with scars covering half his face, approaches with a mixture of pride and desperation. Lord Commander, the man says, inclining his head slightly. I am Tormund Giantsbane. These are my people, what's left of them. What happened? Jon asks, though he dreads the answer. The dead came at dawn 3 days past, Tormund replies, his voice rough with exhaustion. Whites in the hundreds, led by them. The others, white as winter, cold as death, with eyes like blue stars. My warriors fought, but steel means nothing against enemies that cannot die. Murmurs ripple through the gathered Night's Watch brothers. Some look skeptical, others fearful. Jon sees doubt in their faces, the age-old assumption that wildling tales are exaggerated for effect. You're certain they were White Walkers? Jon presses. I've fought many enemies in my years beyond the wall, Tormund says grimly. Men, bears, giants. I know the difference between legend and steel. What hunts us is neither legend nor men. It's death itself, and it comes for all of us, wildling and crow alike. Enough of these tales meant to frighten children. You seek shelter in our halls, yet you bring weapons and fighting men. How do we know this isn't a trap? Because comes a new voice from the gates. They're still being hunted. All eyes turn to see Stannis approaching, flanked by Davos, and several of his own guards. The king's face is grim as he points beyond the gates to the pursuing figures that have drawn closer during the parley. White shapes move among the trees, Stannis observes, moving too fast to be men, too coordinated to be beasts. Whatever drove these people from their homes follows them still. As if summoned by his words, the temperature drops. Frost begins forming on metal surfaces despite the weak morning sun. The horses in the stable grow restless, whinnying in fear at something only they can sense. Then they emerge from the tree line, a dozen figures in ancient armor, moving with unnatural grace across the snow. Their weapons gleam with an inner light, and their eyes burn like blue flames in faces pale as winter itself. White walkers, Sam breathes, his voice barely audible. Panic spreads through the courtyard like wildfire. Some Night's Watch brothers reach for weapons. Others step back in fear. The wildlings form a defensive cluster around their women and children, exhausted warriors, raising whatever weapons they still carry. "Form ranks," Jon shouts, his voice cutting through the chaos. Brothers of the Night's Watch, form ranks and defend the wall. But many hesitate, caught between fear of the supernatural enemy and lingering anger at their Lord Commander's decisions. Ser Alliser stands frozen, his face pale as he stares at approaching death. It is Stannis who moves first. The kin draws his sword, Lightbringer glowing with inner fire, and steps beside Jon. "You heard your Lord Commander," Stannis declares, his voice carrying the authority of absolute command. "Form ranks or die like sheep." The combination of royal authority and imminent death breaks the paralysis. Black-cloaked brothers scramble for weapons and positions, while wildlings take their place beside them. In this moment, old enmities matter less than survival. Jon draws Longclaw, the Valyrian steel blade singing as it clears its scabbard. The sound seems to resonate with power, and for a moment he feels something stirring in his blood. A heat that has nothing to do with exertion or fear. The White Walkers advance, with deliberate patience, their white servants shambling behind them. Jon counts perhaps 30 of the dead, led by their supernatural masters. Not enough to overwhelm Castle Black's defenses, but more than sufficient to test every man present. Dragon glass and Valyrian steel, Jon calls out to his defenders. Those are the only weapons that can truly harm them. Everyone else, target the whites and stay clear of the others themselves. The battle erupts as the dead reach the gate. Whites surge forward with inhuman speed and strength, their frozen flesh impervious to pain or fear. Jon finds himself fighting beside Tormund, their blades working in deadly harmony as they cut down animated corpses. But it is when Jon faces his first White Walker that everything changes. The creature moves like winter wind made flesh, its ancient blade seeking his heart with surgical precision. Jon parries desperately, Longclaw's Valyrian steel meeting the other's weapon in a shower of sparks and steam. The clash ignites something within him. Fire races through his veins, and his movements become fluid as water, deadly as dragon flame. He fights not just with stark training, but with something deeper, something that whispers of dragons and princes and blood that burns with inner flame. Stannis, engaged with his own opponent, watches Jon's transformation with growing amazement. The young Lord Commander moves like a man born to war, his blade dancing through patterns that seem familiar, yet impossible. When Longclaw finally finds its mark, the White Walker shatters like glass touched by flame, its destruction sending a wave of heat through the courtyard. The remaining others, seeing their leader destroyed, retreat with their surviving whites. The supernatural cold lifts, leaving behind only the normal chill of winter and the acrid smell of melted ice. Jon stands amid the battlefield, breathing hard, his sword still glowing faintly in the morning light. Round him, Night's Watch brothers and wildlings alike stare in wonder and newfound respect. Even Sir Alliser looks shaken, his usual hostility replaced by something approaching awe. "The fire burns bright in you," Stannis says quietly, approaching Jon with his own blade still drawn. "Dragon fire, as hot as any that ever scorched the Seven Kingdoms." Jon meets the king's gaze, and in Stannis' eyes he sees recognition, acceptance, and perhaps for the first time, hope. "You fought well, Your Grace," Jon replies. "We all did, but you fought like more than just a Lord Commander. You fought like a king." The words hang in the air between them, heard only by the two men who understand their true meaning. Around them, the survivors begin tending to wounds and clearing the battlefield, unaware that they have just witnessed more than a victory over the dead. They have witnessed the awakening of a dragon. That evening, as the last of the wounded are tended and the wildlings are given quarters within Castle Black's walls, Stannis finds Jon, alone, atop the wall. The young man stares north into the darkness, still processing everything that has happened. "You saved us all today," Stannis says without preamble. "We saved each other," Jon corrects. "Your men fought as bravely as mine. That's not what I mean, and you know it." Stannis moves to stand beside him at the wall's edge. United sworn enemies, in a common cause. You faced the supernatural with courage and skill. Most importantly, you showed mercy to those who needed it, even when your own men counseled otherwise. Jon turns to study the king's profile. "You were testing me." "I was," Stannis admits. "And you passed with honors that would make any father proud. Both your fathers." The admission settles between them like snow, soft but weighty. Jon feels the last of his resistance to the truth crumbling away. He is not just Jon Snow, bastard of Winterfell. He is something more, something that the realm will need in the dark days ahead. "What happens now?" Jon asks. Stannis grips the wall's icy parapet, his knuckles white with cold and conviction. "Now we prepare for the war to come. And we make sure the rightful king is ready to lead it." In the distance, wolves howl their ancient songs into the night. But somewhere in that chorus, Jon thinks he can hear another sound, the beating of wings that have not been heard for generations, growing stronger with each passing moment. The dragon is awake, and winter itself will burn before it. Meanwhile, across the narrow sea in the ancient city of Meereen, Queen Daenerys Targaryen stands on the Great Pyramid's apex, watching smoke rise from another burning building in the city below. The sons of the Harpy have struck again, their golden masks gleaming in the morning light as they vanish into the maze of alleys and slave pits that honeycomb the city. At 16, Daenerys has conquered 3 cities and freed countless slaves, yet she finds ruling more difficult than conquest ever was. The masters she defeated in battle return as shadows in the night, killing her freedmen and terrorizing those who would embrace the new order. For every collar she breaks, another victim falls to insurgent blades. "Your Grace," Ser Jorah Mormont approaches, his weathered face grim with fresh reports. 7 more freedmen were found dead this morning. The sons of the Harpy left their mark, a golden harpy drawn in blood. Daenerys grips the stone balustrade until her knuckles turn white. "How many does that make this month?" 43, Your Grace. The insurgency grows bolder with each passing day. She closes her violet eyes, feeling the weight of every death. When she was conquering, the path seemed clear. Break the chains, topple the masters, free the oppressed. But Ruling requires different skills than conquest, and the game of politics proves more treacherous than any battlefield. The masters think time favors them, she says finally. They believe if they can make the cost high enough, I will abandon Meereen and sail west to Westeros. Will you, Your Grace? Jorah asks carefully, before Daenerys can answer. A commotion in the courtyard below draws their attention. A small party approaches the pyramid's base, dusty from travel and bearing the banners of safe passage. At their head walks a figure that makes both Daenerys and Jorah lean forward in recognition. Is that? Jorah begins. Tyrion Lannister, Daenerys breathes. The imp himself. What brings a Lannister to my court? An hour later, the infamous dwarf stands before Daenerys' throne, looking remarkably composed for a man who has traveled thousands of miles from certain death. His mismatched eyes study her with an intelligence that makes her feel he can see through to her very soul. Your Grace, Tyrion says, offering a bow that manages to be respectful without being servile. I come seeking an audience with the Queen who freed Slaver's Bay. And perhaps, if fate smiles on us both, a new purpose for an old player in the Game of Thrones. You fled King's Landing accused of regicide, Daenerys observes, settling back in her throne. Why should I trust the word of a Lannister? Because, Your Grace, I have no love for those who would see you fail. My dear sister Cersei has made that quite clear through her repeated attempts to see me executed. Tyrion's mouth twists in a bitter smile. Besides, I bring information you will find valuable. News of Westeros, of your enemies, and of the game that continues to play out in your absence. Daenerys exchanges glances with her advisors. Jorah, Barristan Selmy, and Missandei all studying the dwarf with varying degrees of suspicion and curiosity. Speak then, she commands. What news from Westeros? Your enemies tear each other apart, Tyrion reports with evident satisfaction. Cersei has been arrested by the Faith Militant. Tommen sits the Iron Throne in name only, while various factions vie for true power. The realm bleeds, and winter comes to a kingdom unprepared for its bite. Good, Daenerys says, though she takes no pleasure in the suffering of innocents. And my claim to the throne. How do the lords of Westeros regard their rightful queen? Tyrion pauses, choosing his words carefully. Your Grace, there are complications. Other claimants have emerged, each with their own supporters and their own interpretation of legitimacy. Other claimants? Stannis Baratheon styles himself king, though his support dwindles with each defeat. There are rumors of another Aegon landed in the Stormlands, claiming to be your nephew. And he hesitates again. And Daenerys leans forward, her voice sharp with authority. And there are whispers of other Targaryen blood surfacing in unexpected places. Hidden heirs, secret marriages, children thought dead who live still. She has spent her entire life believing herself the last Targaryen, the final hope of her dynasty's restoration. The thought that others might exist, that her claim might be challenged not by usurpers but by family, fills her with a mixture of hope and dread. Hidden heirs, she repeats carefully. Rumors only, Your Grace, Tyrion says quickly, noting her reaction. The sort of tales that spring up in times of chaos, but, in my experience, the most persistent rumors often contain grains of truth. Ser Barristan steps forward, his honor and experience lending weight to his words. Your Grace, if there are other Targaryens alive, would that not be a blessing? Your family's blood would be secure, and you would not bear the burden of restoration alone. Or, Tyrion interjects with his characteristic bluntness, they could prove more legitimate heirs who would see your dragons as tools of their destiny rather than yours. The brutal honesty in his words forces Daenerys to confront uncomfortable truths. She has grown accustomed to being the last dragon, the unique heir to 3 centuries of Targaryen rule, the possibility of sharing that identity, or worse, being subordinate to another's claim, challenges everything she believes about her purpose and destiny. "You speak of legitimacy and claims," she says to Tyrion. "But I have dragons. I have armies. I have freed cities and broken chains. What does legitimacy matter when faced with such power?" "Everything and nothing, Your Grace," Tyrion replies. "Power without legitimacy is tyranny, and even dragons cannot rule over the ashes of their kingdoms forever. But legitimacy without power is just a prettier way to die." His words carry the weight of bitter experience, and Daenerys finds herself both impressed and unsettled by his political acumen. Here is a man who understands the Game of Thrones not as romance or adventure, but as a brutal calculus of power, perception, and survival. "What would you counsel?" she asks. "Return to Westeros," Tyrion says immediately. "Not to conquer, but to claim what is yours by right. Unite the realm against the chaos that tears it apart. And if these other Targaryen claimants exist, meet them as family rather than enemies. A house divided against itself cannot stand, but a house united can reshape the world." As if summoned by his words, a raven arrives from the rookery below. Daenerys accepts the message, noting the unusual combination of seals, ravens from Old Town, the Citadel, and stranger still, what appears to be reports from the far north. "Your Grace," Missandei says, reading over the reports, "these are unusual. They speak of alliances between Night's Watch and wildlings, of White Walkers emerging from legend, of kings treating with bastards as equals." Daenerys studies the parchments, trying to make sense of the fragmentary reports. Something significant is happening in the north, something that defies traditional understanding of politics and power. Across the sea, and half a world away, Melisandre stands before her sacred flames in the chambers of Castle Black. The fire dances higher as she whispers ancient words in Valyrian, seeking visions in the dancing light. The flames show her 2 figures standing atop a great wall of ice. One bears the features of the Starks, but moves with the grace of dragons. The other has silver gold hair and violet eyes, with great beasts soaring overhead. Fire and ice, dragons of different elements, but united in purpose. "The prince that was promised," she breathes, "and the queen who was born to stand beside him." Back in Meereen, Daenerys makes her decision with the sudden certainty that has guided her through conquest and revolution. "Prepare the ships," she commands. "All of them. The slaves of Slavers Bay are free, and their freedom is secure enough to survive my absence. I have spent too long building a kingdom in exile, while my true throne sits occupied by pretenders. Your Grace," Jorah says carefully, "the sons of the Harpy will face the same fate as all who oppose freedom." Daenerys cuts him off. "But I cannot win Westeros from Meereen, and I cannot unite my family from across an ocean. If there are other dragons in the world, then it is time the dragons met." Tyrion nods approvingly. "A wise decision, Your Grace. Though, I should warn you, the game in Westeros has become more complex than when you left. You may find allies in unexpected places, and enemies among those you thought friends." "Then I will trust in fire and blood to show me the truth," Daenerys replies, her voice carrying the steel that has conquered cities and freed nations. "How long to ready the ships?" "A moon's turn, Your Grace. Perhaps less if we push hard," reports one of her captains. "Make it less," she commands. "Winter comes to Westeros, and dragons should meet it with fire." That night, As Meereen prepares for the departure of its dragon queen, Daenerys stands again on her pyramid's peak. But now, instead of looking down at a city in turmoil, she gazes east toward the land of her birth. Somewhere beyond that horizon waits a throne that belongs to her by right of blood and conquest. Somewhere in those distant kingdoms, others who share her blood may stand ready to claim their own destinies. The Game of Thrones will soon have a new player, one who has learned that ruling requires different skills than conquest, but that sometimes conquest is necessary to achieve the peace that makes good rule possible. The dragons are coming home, and Westeros will burn or bow before the storm that follows in their wake. In her private chambers, Daenerys opens an ancient tome of Targaryen genealogies, tracing bloodlines and claims with her finger. If other heirs exist, she will meet them not as conqueror, but as family. The blood of the dragon runs too thin in the world to waste it on fraternal strife. But make no mistake, she is Daenerys Stormborn, mother of dragons, breaker of chains. Whatever awaits her in Westeros, she will face it as a queen, not a supplicant. The Game of Thrones has been played without its most important player for far too long. That is about to change. The Lord Commander's Solar feels different in the days following the battle with the White Walkers. Where once Jon Snow sat behind his desk as a bastard, struggling with command, now something deeper burns in his eyes. The dragon fire that awakened during combat has not faded, and those who knew him before mark the change in his bearing, his voice, his very presence. Stannis Baratheon stands before the great hearth, staring into flames that dance like the ones Melisandre reads for prophecy. Behind him, Jon sits quietly at his desk while Sam arranges parchments and ancient tomes in careful stacks. The moment they have been building toward has finally arrived, and the weight of it settles over the chamber like winter fog. "I have made my decision," Stannis says without turning from the fire. "The test is complete. You have proven yourself worthy of the truth I carry, and more importantly, worthy of the crown that belongs to you by right." Jon feels his stomach tighten. Even expecting these words, hearing them spoken aloud, makes everything suddenly real. "Your Grace." "No." Stannis cuts him off, finally turning to face him directly. "Not Your Grace. Not anymore. You are Aegon Targaryen, 6th of that name, legitimate son of Prince Rhaegar, and Lyanna Stark, rightful heir to the Iron Throne of Westeros." The formal declaration hangs in the air like a sword blade. Sam looks up from his books, his round face solemn, with the gravity of witnessing this moment. Outside, wolves howl in the distance, but within these walls, the last secret of Robert's rebellion finally dies. "I don't feel like a king," Jon says quietly. "I feel like Jon Snow, bastard of Winterfell, struggling to hold together a crumbling Night's Watch, while the dead rise beyond the wall." Stannis moves closer, his expression softening with something approaching paternal concern. "Good. The moment you feel like a king, you will have lost what makes you worthy of kingship. The crown is not a reward, Aegon. It is a burden, a duty, a sacrifice that never ends. Aegon." Jon repeats the name, tasting it like foreign wine. "I've been Jon Snow for 16 years. That name is who I am." "Names can change," Stannis replies. "Identity runs deeper. You are the same man who saved those wildling refugees, who faced the White Walkers without flinching, who chose mercy when others counseled harshness. Whether you call yourself Snow or Targaryen, that core remains unchanged." Sam clears his throat gently, drawing their attention to the documents spread before him. "My lords, if I may, I've been researching the precedents for legitimization, particularly in cases of hidden royal blood." "Show us," Stannis commands. Sam opens an ancient genealogy, its pages yellow with age. Here, the record of Prince Duncan's marriage to Jenny of Oldstones, hidden for years, later acknowledged. And here, King Aegon IV's deathbed legitimization of his bastards. The practice has precedent, especially when the legitimacy serves the realm's interests. Trying to reconcile these historical figures with his own impossible situation. And if the realm rejects my claim, if they see me as another pretender with a convenient story, then you prove yourself through actions, as you have already begun to do, Stannis answers. But I believe you underestimate the power of legitimacy, combined with proven leadership. The realm hungers for a king who can unite, rather than divide, who can face the coming winter with strength and wisdom. The coming winter, Jon repeats, thinking of the blue eyes and ancient malice beyond the wall. The White Walkers care nothing for bloodlines or thrones. They want only to extinguish all warmth, all life. What good is a crown against that threat? Every good, if it gives you the power to unite the living against the dead. Stannis moves to the window, looking out over the wall's icy expanse. Aegon the Conqueror united 7 kingdoms, not through birthright alone, but because the realm needed unity. You face a greater threat than he ever imagined. Jon joins him at the window, studying the endless expanse of ice and snow. If I accept this, if I become Aegon Targaryen, what happens to my vows? To the Night's Watch. The vows of the Night's Watch end at death. Stannis observes, you died as Jon Snow during that battle, and were reborn as Aegon Targaryen. The man who swore those vows no longer exists. That seems like a convenient interpretation. Truth often seems convenient to those who benefit from it, Stannis admits with a slight smile. But consider this. As king, you would have the power to reform the Night's Watch, to prepare the realm for the threat you know is coming. You could do more good as Aegon Targaryen than you ever could as Jon Snow. The argument is persuasive, but Jon still hesitates. Accepting this identity means abandoning everything he thought he knew about himself. It means stepping into a role that could make him the most hunted man in Westeros. If I agree to this, he says carefully, I want it kept secret until the realm is ready. No public declarations, no royal progress. The knowledge stays between us until the time is right. Stannis nods approvingly. Wisdom. The realm is not ready for another claimant. Especially one whose very existence challenges the foundation of Robert's reign. We move carefully, build support quietly. Prove your worth through deed rather than declaration. And your own claim? Jon asks. What becomes of King Stannis Baratheon? I serve the rightful king, as I have always served, Stannis replies without hesitation. My claim was based on being Robert's heir, but Robert was a usurper. If Rhaegar's legitimate son lives, then justice demands I acknowledge him. The sincerity in his voice moves Jon more than any argument about bloodlines or birthrights. Here stands a man who has spent years fighting for what he believed was rightfully his, yet he surrenders that claim for the sake of truth and justice. I need your oath, Jon says finally, not to King Aegon, but to Jon Snow, Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. Swear to me that you'll keep this secret, that you'll support me when the time comes, but that you won't push for revelations before I'm ready. Stannis draws his sword, Lightbringer still faintly glowing with inner fire, and kneels before Jon's chair. The sight of a king kneeling to a bastard should seem absurd, but in this moment it feels like the most natural thing in the world. I, Stannis Baratheon, swear by the old gods and anew to protect the secret of your birth, to support your claim when the time is right, and to serve the true king regardless of what name he chooses to bear. The blade touches the floor with a ring of steel on stone. This I swear by sword and honor. Jon places his hand on Stannis' shoulder. And I, Jon Snow, or Aegon Targaryen, if you speak true, swear to use whatever power I possess in service of the realm and all who dwell in it. This I swear by ice and fire. Sam witnesses the oath with tears in his eyes, understanding that he has just seen the birth of an alliance that could reshape the Seven Kingdoms. When Stannis rises, it is not as a defeated king surrendering his crown, but as a lord paramount pledging his service to his rightful sovereign. "What of your followers?" Jon asks. "Davos, Melisandre, your remaining bannermen. Melisandre has already proclaimed you the prince that was promised. As for my bannermen, they followed me in pursuit of justice. They will understand that justice sometimes requires setting aside personal ambition." Sam looks up from organizing his research. "My lords, there's something else. I've found references to a cache of documents in the Tower of Joy's ruins. Marriage records, correspondence, evidence that could prove the legitimacy beyond any doubt." The Tower of Joy, Jon breathes. Where my mother died, where Ned found me. If such evidence exists, Stannis says we should retrieve it. But carefully, quietly. The wrong people learning of such documents could be catastrophic. Jon nods, his mind already working through the implications. How long do we have? How long before the realm's chaos forces our hand? Not long, Stannis admits. Word from the south grows darker each day. Aegon, the pretender, gains ground in the Stormlands. Daenerys Targaryen stirs in the east. The longer we wait, the more complicated the situation becomes. Then we prepare, Jon decides. We build alliances, we gather evidence, we ready ourselves for the moment when the realm needs a king who can face what's coming. But until that moment arrives, I remain Jon Snow, Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. And I remain your faithful servant. Stannis pledges. As night falls over Castle Black. 3 men sit around a dying fire, planning for a future none of them could have imagined weeks ago. Maps of the 7 kingdoms spread across the table, marked with the positions of armies and claimants, threats and opportunities. But it is the map of the lands beyond the war that draws their attention most often. Somewhere in that frozen waste, the real enemy gathers strength. Whatever name Jon chooses to bear, whatever crown he claims or rejects, the war against the darkness will demand everything he has to give. The bastard of Winterfell has become something more, though the world does not yet know it. In time, the realm will learn that dragons still live, that ice and fire can burn as one, that the prince that was promised walks among them. But, for now, in this quiet chamber atop the wall, Jon Snow accepts his destiny while remaining true to his duty. The Game of Thrones has gained its most important player, though he plays by rules older and more vital than those who chase crowns in the south could ever understand. The long night is coming, and the realm will need every dragon it can find to survive the darkness. Tonight, they have gained one who burns as bright as any that ever soared above the 7 kingdoms. The ravens come in waves, their black wings cutting through grey morning sky like harbingers of upheaval. Jon Snow stands in the rookery of Castle Black, reading message after message, as the political landscape of Westeros shifts beneath his feet like ice breaking in the spring thaw. "Another from King's Landing," Maester Mullin announces, offering a fresh parchment still warm from the Raven's leg. "And 2 more from Old Town." The Citadel's network carries word faster than any royal courier could manage. Jon breaks the seals and reads, his expression growing darker with each line. Cersei Lannister's trial has become a spectacle that grips the capital. The faith militant grows bolder by the day, their armed septons patrolling streets once controlled by gold cloaks and red cloaks. King Tommen sits powerless on his throne, a boy king manipulated by forces that care nothing for his authority or his family name. What news? Stannis enters the rookery, flanked by Davos and several of his knights. The king's face shows the strain of recent days, the weight of supporting another's claim while watching his own kingdom fragment across the narrow sea. The capital burns without flame. Jon replies, passing him the messages. Cersei's enemies close in from all sides. The High Sparrow preaches that kings rule only by the gods' grace, and that grace has been withdrawn from House Lannister. Stannis reads quickly, his jaw tightening with each revelation. Chaos, the realm bleeds while its rulers play at righteousness and revenge. And opportunity, adds Davos quietly, though his tone suggests he takes no pleasure in the observation. With Cersei imprisoned and Tommen powerless, the Iron Throne sits effectively empty. Other claimants will move to fill that void. More ravens arrive as they speak, their harsh cries echoing off the rookery's stone walls. Jon accepts the messages with growing unease, recognizing seals from across the Seven Kingdoms and beyond. Reports from the east, he announces, unrolling a parchment marked with the seal of a trading company. Daenerys Targaryen has left Meereen. Her ships sail west, with 3 dragons and an army that grows with each port they touch. The words strike like thunder. Stannis exchanges glances with Davos, both understanding the implications immediately. A Targaryen claimant, with dragons, changes every calculation, every strategy, every hope of peaceful succession. How long until she reaches Westeros? Stannis asks. Moons. Perhaps less if the winds favor her. Jon replies. The message speaks of slave soldiers converted to loyal followers, of sellsword companies abandoning their contracts to join her cause. She comes not as a conqueror, but as a liberator, at least in the eyes of those who follow her. Below, in the courtyard, a horn sounds 3 times, the signal for a significant arrival. Jon moves to the window and sees a column of wildlings approaching the gates, their numbers far greater than any group that has sought refuge before. At their head rides a familiar figure with a great red beard and arms thick as tree trunks. Tormund, Jon breathes. What brings him here with such a host? They descend quickly to the courtyard, where Tormund Giantsbane dismounts from his horse, with the weariness of a man who has ridden hard through nightmare. His face, weathered by countless winters, carries a grim expression that chills Jon more than the cold wind. Lord Commander, Tormund says, inclining his massive head, I bring my people to you because there's nowhere left to run. The dead march south in numbers that darken the horizon. Jon feels ice form in his stomach. How many? Thousands upon thousands. An army of whites, led by others riding dead horses, commanding giant spiders made of bone and shadow. They move like a tide of winter death, consuming every living thing in their path. Ser Alistair Thorne pushes through the gathered crowd, his face twisted with familiar disgust. More wildling lies, meant to frighten us into opening our gates to savages and murderers. Tormund's hand drops to his axe handle, but Jon steps between them before violence can erupt. Ser Alistair, these people seek sanctuary from an enemy that threatens us all, Jon says firmly. We are sworn to defend the realm against what lies beyond the wall. We are sworn to defend the realm from wildlings, Thorne spits back, not to harbor them within our walls while they spin tales of impossible armies. The tales are true, comes a new voice from behind them. Melisandre approaches across the courtyard, her red robes billowing in the wind like flame-made fabric. Her ruby gleams at her throat, and her eyes hold the distant look of one who has gazed into fires that burn in other worlds. "I have seen them in the flames," she continues, her voice carrying the weight of prophecy. "The dead that walk, the cold that kills, the darkness that devours light itself. Winter comes with teeth and claws, and only fire can hold it back." She turns to Jon, studying his face with an intensity that makes him feel transparent. "The time of hiding is ending," she declares. "Soon you must choose between the man you were and the king you were born to be. The realm will need dragons to face what comes from the north." Jon glances at Stannis, seeing his own uncertainty reflected in the king's eyes. They had hoped for more time to prepare, more opportunities to build alliances and gather support. But time is a luxury the dead do not grant. "How long do we have?" Jon asks Tormund. "Days, perhaps a week if the snows slow them," the wildling replies. "But they don't tire, don't hunger, don't fear. They march without pause through blizzards that would kill any living army. Sure, the gathered brothers of the Night's Watch murmur uneasily among themselves. Some look skeptical, others fearful. Jon can see the division in their ranks growing wider with each revelation. "Lord Commander," Sam approaches nervously, carrying an armload of books and scrolls. "I've been researching the ancient records, the accounts of the Long Night. If these reports are true, if the White Walkers march in such numbers, then this could be the beginning of another age of darkness." "Another long night," Jon repeats, the words heavy as stones. How did it end before? According to the legends, it took the combined strength of the first men and the children of the forest working together. Heroes arose who could wield flame against the cold, who united the living against the dead. Sam's voice drops to a whisper. They speak of a prince who was promised, born of ice and fire, whose coming would herald the dawn. Melisandre nods approvingly. The prince that was promised stands among us now. But prophecies mean nothing if the prince refuses his destiny. All eyes turn to Jon, and he feels the weight of expectation, fear, and hope pressing down on him like a physical force. In the distance, ravens continue to arrive with news of a realm in chaos. Somewhere beyond the eastern horizon, dragons fly toward shores they have not seen for generations. And beyond the war, an enemy older than kingdoms and kings marshals forces that could end all human ambition forever. The realm fractures while the true enemy approaches, Stannis observes grimly. Pretenders fight for crowns, while the dead prepare to claim all crowns for themselves. Jon stares north toward the wall's icy heights, his mind racing through possibilities and consequences. Every choice leads to other choices, each more dangerous than the last. But inaction is also a choice, and perhaps the most dangerous of all. "Prepare quarters for Tormund's people," he commands finally. "Double the watches on the wall. Send ravens to every lord in the north. They need to know what's coming." "And then?" Davos asks quietly. Jon looks at each face around him. Stannis with his iron determination, Sam with his scholarly concern, Melisandre with her mystical certainty, Tormund with his warrior's pragmatism. All of them wait for his next words. "Then we prepare for war," Jon says simply. "Not the Game of Thrones, not the struggles of kings and queens, but the war that will decide whether spring ever comes again." A raven cries overhead, and in the distance, wolves begin their evening songs. But tonight, those howls sound different, less like music and more like warnings carried on the wind. In his chambers that night, Jon studies the maps spread across his desk. Reports mark the positions of various armies across Westeros, but his attention keeps returning to the unmarked lands beyond the wall. Somewhere in that white emptiness, death itself marches south. Stannis enters without knocking, carrying 2 cups of mulled wine. He sets one beside Jon's elbow and settles into the chair across from the desk. The ravens bring word of opportunity and disaster. In equal measure, Stannis observes. Cersei's fall creates openings for those bold enough to seize them. But boldness means nothing if the realm itself ceases to exist. You could still press your claim, Jon says quietly. The lords might rally to you rather than face the chaos of competing Targaryens. I've made my choice. The rightful king sits before me, even if he refuses to acknowledge it. My duty is clear, and if acknowledging it means civil war, just as the White Walkers arrive, then we make sure it doesn't come to that, Stannis replies. We find another way. We build alliances based on necessity rather than bloodlines. We unite the realm against the common enemy before revealing the truths that might divide it. Jon nods slowly, understanding the wisdom in those words. The Game of Thrones has always been about power and legitimacy, but the coming war will be about survival itself. Those who cannot set aside their ambitions in service of that greater cause will find their crowns as worthless as any other bones scattered in the snow. Outside, the wind howls across the wall with the sound of approaching winter. Inside, 2 kings, one acknowledged, one hidden, plan for a war unlike any the world has ever seen. The realm will soon learn that the true Game of Thrones is played not for crowns of gold, but for the right to see another dawn. And, in that game, dragons and kings and bastards all play by the same rules: unite or die. The ravens have delivered their messages. Now comes the time for action, for choices that cannot be undone, for the awakening of fires that have slept too long in the cold. Winter is here, and the realm is not ready. But perhaps, with fire and ice united, it can become ready before the darkness claims everything beneath the sky. The silver strings of Rhaegar's harp gleam in the candlelight as Jon Snow sits alone in his chambers, the instrument resting across his knees like a bridge between 2 worlds. For days he has stared at it, remembering Stannis' words about music and dragons, about princes who could make grown men weep with their songs. With trembling fingers, Jon plucks a single string. The note that rings out is pure and clear, hauntingly beautiful. Something deep within his chest responds to the sound, a recognition he cannot explain, but feels in his very bones. I never learned to play, he murmurs to the empty room. Yet his hands move across the strings with growing confidence, finding chords and melodies that seem to come from memory rather than training. The music that emerges is unlike anything he has heard in the halls of Winterfell or the barracks of Castle Black. It carries the melancholy of autumn leaves and the fierce joy of spring storms. It speaks of love and loss, of secrets buried and truths revealed, of dragons soaring over frozen wastes. As the melody builds, images flash behind Jon's closed eyes. A silver-haired prince standing by a tower window, playing this same harp while tears stream down his face. A woman with wild beauty and stark grey eyes, listening with her hand pressed to her swelling belly. Words spoken in a chamber that smells of blood and roses. His name is Aegon. Promise me, Ned. Promise me you'll protect him. Jon's eyes snap open, the vision shattering like ice touched by flame. His hands shake as he sets the harp aside, overwhelmed by memories that cannot be his own, yet feel more real than his own childhood. A knock at the door interrupts his racing thoughts. Enter. Stannis steps inside, followed by Sam, who carries an armload of books and parchments. The king's eyes immediately fix on the harp, and something like satisfaction crosses his weathered features. "You've been playing," Stannis observes. "It is not a question." "I don't understand how," Jon replies honestly. "The music comes from somewhere I can't name. And when I play, I see things, remember things that never happened to me." "Dragon dreams," Sam says softly, setting down his books. "I've been researching Targaryen bloodlines, their gifts and curses. Many of them experienced visions, prophetic dreams, memories inherited through blood rather than experience." Stannis nods grimly. "Your father, Rhaegar, was consumed by prophecy. He believed the prince that was promised would be born of his line, would unite ice and fire against a darkness that threatened all life. And now that darkness marches south," Jon says, thinking of Tormund's warnings about the vast army of the dead. "Which is why you must understand what you truly are," Stannis continues. "Not just a king, not just a Targaryen, but something more. The melding of two ancient bloodlines, each carrying power the other lacks." Jon picks up the harp again, letting his fingers find the strings. The melody that emerges this time is different, stronger, more complex, weaving themes of winter and summer, wolf and dragon, duty and destiny. "Tell me about him," Jon says as he plays. "About Rhaegar. What was he like?" Stannis settles into a chair, his expression thoughtful. "Brilliant. Melancholy. Obsessed with books and prophecies, when he should have been learning statecraft. He could move men to tears with his music, but he struggled to inspire them to follow him into battle. Yet people speak of him as a great knight. He was skilled with a sword, yes, but his greatest weapon was his mind, his ability to see patterns others missed. He believed the songs and legends held truths that history had forgotten." Sam looks up from his research. "According to these genealogies, Rhaegar wasn't the first Targaryen to believe in the prince that was promised prophecy. It goes back centuries, mentioned in the private writings of kings and queens who never spoke of it publicly. Because they feared being seen as mad," Jon asks. "Because they feared being wrong," Stannis corrects. "Prophecy is a dangerous thing. It can drive men to greatness or madness, sometimes both." Their conversation is interrupted by the sound of horns. 3 long blasts, followed by 6 short ones. Jon's blood turns to ice. It is the signal for a massive attack, far beyond anything the Wall has faced in living memory. They rush to the battlements, where chaos already grips Castle Black. The entire northern horizon darkens with moving figures. Not the small force they faced before, but an army that stretches from mountain to mountain. White walkers stride among their white servants, like generals commanding an unstoppable tide of death. "7 hells," breathes Sir Alliser Thorne, for once too overwhelmed to voice his usual complaints. "There must be 50,000 of them." Jon grips the parapet, his mind racing through defensive possibilities. The wall is strong, but not against numbers like these. Every man, woman, and child south of the Great Barrier depends on the decisions he makes in the next few minutes. "Signal the evacuation of the villages below," he commands. "Get every living soul behind our walls. Loose every raven we have. The North must know what comes." "My lord," Sam says urgently. The ancient records speak of tactics used during the long night, ways to turn the enemy's numbers against them. The dead reach the wall's base and begin their impossible climb, clawing their way up the ice face like spiders made of bone and frozen flesh. Some carry grappling hooks and scaling ladders, while others simply use their bare hands, their inhuman strength finding purchase where living men would fall. "Archers," Jon shouts, "target the White Walkers. Dragonglass and Valyrian steel only. Save your ordinary arrows for the Whites." The battle erupts along the wall's entire length. Wildlings fight beside Night's Watch brothers, their old enmities forgotten in the face of extinction. Giants lumber across the battlements, swinging massive clubs at climbing wights, while rangers loose arrow after arrow into the tide of death below. But it is not enough. For every wight that falls, two more take its place. The White Walkers advance with cold patience, their ancient weapons shattering steel and splitting shields. Men begin to fall, their screams echoing off the ice. Jon draws Longclaw, the Valyrian steel singing as it clears its scabbard. Around him, the defense wavers as fear spreads through the ranks. He can see it in their faces, the growing certainty that this night will see the end of everything. Listen to me. Jon's voice cuts through the chaos like a blade. These things want us to fear them, to break before their numbers. But we are the shield that guards the realms of men. We are the watchers on the wall. Today we show them what the living can do when they fight as one. Something changes in his voice as he speaks, a resonance that carries beyond natural sound. The dragon fire that awakened during his first battle with the White Walkers now burns brighter, fueled by desperation and determination. When he raises Longclaw, the blade seems to glow with inner light. The men around him straighten, their fear replaced by something stronger. Wildlings and crows, Northmen and Southrun knights all feel the pull of that strange authority. They form ranks around their Lord Commander, ready to follow him into darkness itself. Jon leaps down from the battlements, landing among a cluster of wights that have breached the courtyard. Longclaw cuts through them like fire through ice, each stroke guided by instincts older than training. Behind him comes Stannis with light bringer blazing, while Tormund's axe cleaves through frozen skulls with brutal efficiency. The battle rages through the night, but gradually the tide begins to turn. Jon's presence on the battlefield changes everything. Wherever he fights, the dead fall faster, and the living fight with courage that borders on madness. His commands are obeyed instantly, his tactical decisions saving hundreds of lives. When dawn finally breaks, the White Walker army retreats beyond the tree line. The wall still stands, though at terrible cost. Bodies lie scattered across the battlements and courtyards, some to be burned, others to be added to the enemy's ranks when next they march. Jon stands atop the wall as the sun rises, surveying the aftermath of the greatest battle since the construction of the Great Barrier. Round him, exhausted defenders tend their wounds and count their dead. He has saved them all, but the cost weighs heavy on his heart. "You fought like more than a man last night," Stannis says, climbing to join him on the battlements. "You fought like a king, like something more than a king." Jon nods warily. I felt it, the fire burning in my blood, the certainty of command. For the first time, I understood what it means to be both wolf and dragon. That evening, as the dead are burned and the wounded tended, Jon sits in the great hall of Castle Black, with Rhaegar's harp in his hands. The hall is packed with survivors, Night's Watch brothers, wildlings, refugees from the villages below. All of them look to him with something approaching reverence. He begins to play, and the melody that emerges is unlike anything he has ever created. It speaks of winter and spring, of death and rebirth, of hope rising from the ashes of despair. The music weaves through the hall like living warmth, touching every heart and easing every fear. Hardened warriors weep openly as the song continues. Wildlings who have known only violence find peace in the haunting melody. Even the giants lower their massive heads, their ancient eyes soft with something like wonder. When the last note fades, the hall remains silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, One by one, every person present drops to one knee. Crows and wildlings, Northmen and Southron knights, all acknowledge the truth that can no longer be denied. Jon Snow is no bastard. He is Aegon Targaryen, the prince that was promised, the dragon hidden in winter. And tonight, for the first time in his life, he accepts that destiny completely. The Game of Thrones continues to rage across Westeros. But here, at the end of the world, a king has awakened who cares nothing for crowns of gold. His crown is made of ice and starlight, and his throne is the wall itself. Winter has come, but the fire burns bright in the darkness. The dragon and the wolf have finally become one, and their song will echo across the 7 kingdoms until the very stones remember its melody. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new battles, new choices between duty and desire. But tonight, the realm has a king worthy of the crown he refuses to claim. A king who rules not through fear or ambition, but through the power of hope itself. The long night may be coming, but the dawn will follow. And when it does, it will rise on a world transformed by fire and song. The great hall of Castle Black has never hosted a gathering quite like this one. Wildling, chieftains sit beside knights' watch officers, their ancient enmities set aside in the wake of the battle that saved them all. At the high table, Jon Snow faces the assembled leaders, while Stannis Baratheon stands at his right hand. No longer a king, but something more valuable. A kingmaker. Tormund Giantsbane leans forward in his chair, his weathered face serious despite the horn of ale in his massive hands. You're telling me that Jon Snow, the bastard who opened the gates to my people, is really a Targaryen prince with a claim to the Iron Throne? I'm telling you, Stannis replies, with his characteristic bluntness, that the man who saved your life and the lives of every person in this hall is Aegon Targaryen, 6th of his name, legitimate son of Prince Rhaegar and Lyanna Stark. The revelation sends murmurs through the gathered wildlings. Some look skeptical, others intrigued, but all of them remember the battle, remember how Jon fought like something more than mortal, how his voice carried authority that made even giants listen. Prove it, demands another chieftain, a grizzled woman with scars covering half her face. Pretty words mean nothing north of the wall. Show us something we can see with our own eyes. Sam Tarly rises from his place at the table, his arms filled with ancient tomes and carefully copied documents. Despite his nervousness at addressing such a formidable gathering, his voice carries the conviction of absolute certainty. The proof lies in bloodlines, in timing, in the very songs and legends our ancestors preserved. Sam begins, opening the first book. Prince Rhaegar was obsessed with prophecy, particularly the promise of a prince born of ice and fire, who would unite the realm against darkness. He spreads out a genealogy chart, its ancient parchment, marked with careful notations. Rhaegar's marriage to Elia Martell was political, loveless, but his relationship with Lyanna Stark was different. Multiple sources suggest they were secretly married before she died giving birth to their son. And you think that son is Jon? Tormund asks, though his tone suggests he already believes. Look at the evidence, Sam continues, warming to his subject. The timing. Jon was born in 283, the same year as Lyanna's death. The secrecy. Ned Stark, the most honorable man in Westeros, never spoke of Jon's mother, despite years of questions. The dreams. Jon has experienced visions and memories that suggest Targaryen dragon dreams. Melisandre rises from her place near the fire, her red robe seeming to glow in the torchlight. The Lord of Light has shown me visions of the prince that was promised. I have seen dragons in the flames, fire and ice, united against the coming darkness. The blood of the dragon burns bright in Jon Snow, brighter than in any Targaryen who has lived for generations. Dragons, scoffs one of the Night's Watch officers. You speak of myths and legends. I speak of power, Melisandre replies firmly. Power I witnessed during the battle when this young man fought like flame made flesh. Power that moved giants and inspired wildlings to die for a cause they barely understood. That is not the power of bastard blood. That is the fire of dragons awakening. Jon has remained silent throughout the discussion, letting others make the case for his parentage. But now he stands, and the hall falls quiet with the expectation of authority. I don't ask you to believe in my blood, he says simply. I ask you to believe in what we've accomplished together. Wildlings and crows fighting side by side. Giants and men united against the true enemy. That unity is what matters, not crowns or titles or ancient bloodlines. But the bloodline matters to others, Stannis interjects. The lords of Westeros, the people of the Seven Kingdoms. They understand legitimacy, even when they don't understand necessity. If we're to unite the realm against what's coming, we need both the power of truth and the authority of law. A commotion outside the hall interrupts their debate. Horns blow, announcing new arrivals at Castle Black. Within minutes, a steward enters with word that a delegation from the northern houses approaches under banners of parley. Mountain clans, the steward reports. House Flint, House Wool, House Nori. They say they've come to see the wolf, who fights with dragon fire. Word of the battle has spread faster than ravens could carry it. And now the North itself comes to investigate the rumors. Bring them in, Jon commands. Let them hear what we have to say. The mountain clansmen who enter the hall are everything legends claim. Hard men shaped by harder winters. Loyal to ancient codes that predate kings and kingdoms. Their leader, an elderly man whose grey beard reaches nearly to his belt, approaches the high table with the confidence of one who has never bent the knee to southern lords. I am Hugo Wool, he announces, his voice carrying the authority of mountains. We've heard tales from fleeing wildlings about a battle that saved the world and a bastard who fights like the heroes of old songs. We've come to see for ourselves. What you see before you, Stannis says formally, is Aegon Targaryen, rightful king of the Seven Kingdoms, heir to the Iron Throne by right of blood and law. Quote, Hugo Wool's eyes narrow as he studies Jon's face. Targaryen? You speak of dragon kings in halls built to guard against wildlings and worse. What proof do you offer? Sam steps forward again, this time carrying a different set of documents. Letters written in High Valyrian, found among Maester Aemon's personal effects after his death. Correspondence between him and his family, mentioning a nephew hidden in the north. Birth records from Starfall that show discrepancies in dates and names. But it is Melisandre who provides the proof the Mountain Lords understand. She approaches the great hearth and whispers words in Old Valyrian. The flames leap higher, dancing in patterns that form shapes, dragons soaring over walls of ice, a crown of winter roses, a harp with silver strings. The fires do not lie, she declares. They show the truth of blood and destiny. This is the prince that was promised, the one foretold in prophecy and dream. Hugo Wool stares at the flames for a long moment, then turns back to Jon. Prince or bastard, you fought for the living against the dead. You opened your gates to enemies and made them brothers. You held the wall when lesser men would have fled south. Slowly, deliberately, the old mountain lord drops to one knee. House Wool remembers the old ways, the time before southern kings. If you are the dragon prince of prophecy, then House Wool will follow you into whatever darkness comes. One by one, the other mountain lords kneel as well. Then Tormund, grinning despite the solemnity of the moment. If the mountain lords can bow to a dragon prince, I suppose the free folk can too. You've earned our loyalty. Jon Snow or Aegon Targaryen. Doesn't matter what name you wear. Stannis steps forward, drawing Lightbringer with ceremonial precision. The blade blazes with inner fire as he kneels before Jon, offering the sword hilt first. I, Stannis Baratheon, rightful king of Westeros, by right of conquest and law, do hereby abdicate my claim in favor of Aegon Targaryen, sixth of his name, whose blood carries the stronger right. His voice carries to every corner of the hall. Let all present witness that justice recognizes the true king. The weight of the moment settles over the gathered assembly like winter snow. Here, in this ancient hall at the edge of the world, a new king receives acclamation not through conquest or inheritance, but through the recognition of those who have seen him tested in the crucible of battle. I accept the loyalty you offer, Jon says quietly, though his voice carries to every ear. Not as Aegon Targaryen seeking a crown, but as a man sworn to protect the realm against what threatens to destroy it. If I am king, then my kingdom is every soul who stands against the darkness. Sam produces one final document, a letter bearing multiple seals and written in his careful script. Ravens have been prepared to carry word to Lord Manderley in White Harbour, Lord Mormont on Bear Island, and other loyal northern houses. We've been careful with our words, but those who can read between the lines will understand that something significant has occurred here. And the South, asks Hugo Wool, what of the lords who follow other claimants? The South will learn in time, Stannis replies. For now, it's enough to secure the North and prepare for what must come. When the realm sees that winter truly has arrived, when the dead march beyond the wall in numbers that darken the sky, then they will understand why bloodlines matter less than the strength to face the end of the world. And, as night falls over Castle Black, Jon stands once more atop the wall, but now he is no longer alone in the burden of command. Below in the hall, wildlings and mountain lords plan the defense of a kingdom that exists beyond any crown. Ravens carry word to allies who must choose between old loyalties and new realities. The Game of Thrones continues across the Seven Kingdoms, but here at the end of the world, a king has been born who cares nothing for golden crowns. His crown is made of ice and starlight, his throne carved from the wall itself. Stannis joins him at the parapet, no longer a rival but a trusted advisor. How does it feel to be king? Jon considers the question seriously. Like the weight of the world rests on my shoulders. Like every decision I make will determine whether children yet to be born will live to see spring. Good, Stannis says with satisfaction. That fear will keep you honest. The moment you stop feeling that weight is the moment you stop being worthy of the crown. In the distance, wolves sing their ancient songs to the stars. But tonight, there is another sound carried on the wind. The beating of wings that have not been heard in the north for 300 years. Dragons are coming home to ice and winter, and when they arrive, the realm will discover that the blood of the dragon has awakened in the most unlikely of places. The prince that was promised has claimed his birthright at last, not through conquest or politics, but through the oldest form of kingship, the loyalty of those who choose to follow because they believe in the man rather than the crown he wears. Winter is here, but the fire burns bright against the darkness. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new armies marching north and south. But tonight, the realm has a king who understands that the true Game of Thrones is not played for power, but for the future of all who draw breath beneath the sky. The dragon and the wolf have united, and their roar will echo across the seven kingdoms until the very stones remember the sound of hope returning to the world. Dawn breaks grey and cold over Castle Black, but for the first time in memory, the light carries hope rather than foreboding. The great courtyard bustles with activity as ravens are prepared for flights that will reshape the seven kingdoms. In the Lord Commander's solar, now a king's chamber, Jon Snow sits at his desk drafting letters that will echo through history. The first bears the seal of House Targaryen, pressed in black wax with the three-headed dragon that has not been seen on official correspondence for nearly 2 decades. It is addressed to Daenerys Targaryen, Queen of Meereen, Mother of Dragons, and carries words that could prevent a war or start one. Your Grace, Jon writes in his careful script, I am Aegon Targaryen, 6th of that name, son of Prince Rhaegar and Lyanna Stark. I write not as a rival to your claim, but as family seeking alliance against enemies that threaten all who draw breath. The dead stir beyond the wall in numbers that could end the world itself. Fire and ice must unite, or both shall be extinguished in endless night. Sam Tarly looks up from his own writing desk, where he prepares copies of the documents that prove Jon's legitimacy. Do you think she'll believe it? Accept the alliance, rather than see you as another pretender? She has to, Jon replies simply. The alternative is dragons fighting dragons, while the realm burns and the dead march south. Even if she doubts my bloodline, the threat from beyond the wall is real enough to demand cooperation. Stannis enters carrying another set of documents. The new structure for the Night's Watch, reorganized to serve not just the North, but all the seven kingdoms. No longer will the Watch be a dumping ground for criminals and cast-offs. It will become an honored brotherhood, dedicated to defending the realm against supernatural threats. The restructuring is ready for your seal, Stannis reports, settling into his chair with the ease of a man who has found his proper place at last. We've divided the responsibilities. The wall garrison remains here, but new chapters will be established at key points throughout the realm. When the dead march south, every kingdom will have defenders ready. And the funding. Lord Manderley has pledged the wealth of White Harbor. The mountain clans offer men and steel. The wildlings, well, they offer themselves, which may be worth more than gold when the final battle comes. Jon nods, signing the documents with the name he is still learning to claim as his own. Each signature, as Aegon Targaryen feels both foreign and inevitable, like donning armor that was always meant to fit him. A horn sounds from the courtyard, 3 short blasts announcing visitors. Through the window, Jon sees a delegation approaching under banners he recognizes. House Mormont of Bear Island, House Glover of Deepwood Motte, and others who have answered the careful summons sent north. The lords arrive, Stannis observes. Are you ready to face them, as a king rather than a bastard? Jon stands, adjusting the simple circlet of iron and dragon glass that serves as his crown. It bears no jewels or gold, only the austere beauty of materials that can kill White Walkers. This is a king's crown for the war to come, not for peacetime pageantry. In the great hall, the assembled lords of the North gather beneath banners that tell the story of ancient loyalty and newer unity. The direwolf of Stark flies beside the 3-headed dragon of Targaryen, while wildling totems stand with the heraldry of noble houses. It is a sight that would have been impossible weeks ago, yet now feels as natural as sunrise. Lord Commander Mormont of Bear Island, young Lyanna's uncle, speaks first, his gruff voice carrying across the hall. We've heard tales that strain belief. A bastard, revealed as a prince, a Targaryen king crowned at the wall, if not for the mountain lords vouching for it. I'd think it tavern talk. Yet here you are, Jon replies, taking his place not on a throne, but standing among them as an equal, which suggests you believe there might be truth in those tales. I believe in what I've seen, Mormont replies. Ravens from the wall speak of battles against creatures from legend. My own people report strange cold moving south. Animals fleeing from forests where nothing living should remain. If there's truth to these threats, then the North needs unity more than it needs pride. Jon draws Longclaw, the Valyrian steel blade singing as it clears its scabbard, but instead of pointing it in threat, he places it on the table before them. I claim no throne through conquest or inheritance alone, he declares. I claim it through necessity. The realm faces an enemy that cares nothing for our laws or our quarrels. We can face it divided and die one by one, or face it united and perhaps see spring again. One by one, the northern lords pledge their fealty, not to Jon Snow the bastard, but to Aegon Targaryen the king. Their words are simple, their oaths binding. When the ceremony concludes, the North stands united under a crown of ice and fire. But it is the evening that carries the greatest significance. As the sun sets behind the mountains, Jon climbs to the top of the wall, with Rhaegar's harp in his hands. Below him, the castle buzzes with activity as his new kingdom organizes itself for war. Above him, stars emerge in a clear winter sky. Stannis joins him on the battlements, wrapped in a cloak against the cold. The ravens have flown. By now, word spreads across the 7 kingdoms that Rhaegar's son lives and rules from the wall. And what do you think they'll make of it? Some will call it lies. Others will see opportunity. A few will understand it as the truth that could save them all. Stannis pauses, watching his breath mist in the frigid air. The important thing is that the message is carried. Those who need to hear it will listen. Jon raises the harp, his fingers finding the silver strings with the ease of inherited memory. The melody that emerges speaks of hope rising from darkness, of unity forged in fire and ice. The music carries across the wall and beyond, touching the hearts of all who hear it. In the courtyard below, wildlings and crows alike pause in their work to listen. Giants bow their massive heads, while direwolves howl harmonies that echo off the ancient ice. The song speaks of endings and beginnings, of princes hidden and dragons awakening, of the long night that comes before the dawn. When the last note fades, Jon stands alone with his thoughts and his crown. Somewhere beyond the eastern horizon, dragons fly toward Westeros with their mother seeking her birthright. Somewhere in the south, pretenders and queens scheme for crowns that may prove worthless when winter's true face is revealed. But here, at the end of the world, a king has awakened who understands that the greatest game of thrones is not played for power, but for hope itself. The song of ice and fire has begun in earnest, and its melody will echo across the 7 kingdoms, until every stone remembers the sound of dragons coming home. In years to come, bards will sing of this moment, the night a bastard became a king, the hour when 2 great houses united against the dark. They will tell of silver strings and iron crowns, of oaths sworn in the shadow of the war, and ravens carrying word of impossible truths. But those who lived it know the real story, not of prophecies fulfilled or destinies claimed, but of people choosing hope over fear, unity over division, tomorrow over today. The prince that was promised was not born to save the world. He was made by those who refused to let it end. Jon Aegon Targaryen looks north toward the lands beyond the wall, where ancient enemies gather strength for the battle that will determine whether children yet unborn will live to laugh in spring sunshine. The war is coming, but he is ready for it. The dragon hidden in winter has awakened at last, and his fire burns bright against the darkness. Winter may be here, but the spring will follow, and when it does, it will rise on a world transformed by the marriage of ice and fire, of wolf and dragon, of everything that was and everything that yet might be. The harp rests silent in his hands, but the song continues in the wind that howls across the wall. In that sound, those who listen carefully can hear the beating of wings that have not touched northern skies for 3 centuries, growing stronger with each passing night. The Game of Thrones goes on, but the rules have changed forever. Now it is played not for crowns of gold, but for the future itself. And in that game, the player who refuses to play for himself holds all the winning cards. That's our theory. Westeros is a land filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey across the 7 kingdoms and beyond, then please like,